Hi, welcome to another edition of the Firefighters Commute, where we hope to mentor you on your firefighting travels. You're with Captain Dave and Engineer Lisa.
And now we go into Captain's disciplinary defense.
Oh man, feels like heavy already. It weighs a lot. You're like, oh no, I never want to be that guy or girl. Like,
if you want to be a captain, you have to understand that you bring some liability to the department. And I'll be quick. If you're from a fire captain and above, you bring a liability to the district, and the fact that the district can't say, or the department can't say that they're separate from your behavior. If you're an engineer down to firefighter, or you're working in the administration office, if you do something, if you do something reckless, the department can say, or the fire agency can say, we can't be held responsible for their behavior because they're not in a rank, an officer or a management rank, and that starts at the rank of captain, whether you're acting or not.
Okay.
The very beginning of management. And so once you're in management, what most fire agencies don't realize is they have some threats driving around on fire engines in the rank of captain, because their actions to anybody directly link the agency to any wrongdoing. They have that vicarious liability. And I'm not an attorney, but I'm letting all the captains know, or aspiring captains, that your behavior brings in that agency's threat. You become a threat to that agency in your behavior with how you manage a firefighter bill of rights. Fire captain can screw up everything with how they approach a discipline. You're my firefighter, and I hear that you did something, and I start asking you questions about that event. If I ask you questions about something that you can get disciplined over, the department, because I'm a captain, might be required to pay a $100,000 or plus fine. And
to who?
To a state agency when they fine the department for violating the firefighter bill of rights.
So if your friend is your captain and they know you've done something wrong, if they violate your bill of rights, could that be a hookup?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it can.
Oh,
so
I was just thinking about it. Not that I'm trying to.
So a captain can go,
curious.
whoopsie, or the captain can say, I just asked a couple of questions, and now if there is no rule in the rule book, in the department rule book, that says captains are not allowed to engage in any investigation whatsoever, if that rule exists, which I would advise every fire department to have.
Well, my captain's test just last year, we were doing the role playing of how much is too much. Like, when do you find out too much? And you can, from what I understand, ask questions until you feel like there's a possibility that something occurred that could lead to discipline for the person. And that's when you're like, over my head, stop everything right now.
What we're talking about here is the department's liability at that rank. That rank introduces a tremendous amount of liability to the department. And so if that rank, the person sitting in that seat, is reckless in their behavior, doesn't give a shit, treats somebody unfairly, poorly, the fire agency can't say he's on his own. They have to own all of that person's actions as if he is an extension of their very hand. It's not enjoyable to take the burden on. It's a part of the job. If you take it serious, you say, all right, I got to get as familiar as possible with the parameters that I have to play within. Like any football player should know where the sidelines are. If you become a captain, you better have memorized the rules. You better know your policies inside and out. And then you have to know what you can create as a liability to the department.
Vicarious liability, like, you have to use a lot of your common sense on human relations, too. Like, if you feel like something's wrong or things aren't quite right, like, you know it. You would know to act as an officer, right? Like, you're not, like, blindsided by your new job capacity, are you? I mean...
You can walk into it completely ignorant and get the promotion and carry the vicarious liability, and the department or agency would have to prove, in order to separate themselves from this, they would have to prove that they did in fact train you that discrimination. Okay, that's a state requirement. harassment and discrimination training. Every year, officers and above are required to have that training. And the entity that's employing them
can
needs
say,
to
hey, I've
maintain
given them
a record.
training, so if they act outside of their training, then they can say, hey, that's on them.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
If the district's or the entity's policies create, whether they're omitting it or outright admitting you're excluded, if it creates an exclusion in its policies, that the policies seem to bias one group over another, the district or entire entity carries that liability. Carries a liability. If somebody says that's wrong and unlawful,
and which you've seen that,
agency,
in Chicago and New York and other places and stuff
so
like that.
So you really got to make sure your policy does not inadvertently discriminate. Now, if it does, there's corrective means. It's not like, oh man, I messed up on the policy the other day, and now we got a $10 million lawsuit. There's an opportunity to make corrections.
Gosh.
Like, oh, I didn't even know.
So I wrote this policy in.
I'm sticking with this.
Okay.
If they can say, we've trained you that it was wrong behavior and you did it anyway, now they can start to create that division. That division can't be created if their policies inadvertently either encourage that behavior, which certain agencies' policies allow for that behavior to occur. So now you have different dimensions. The liability and the vicariousness of it is not really the issue here. It's the ignorance of the individual. If you're an officer, if you want to become a captain, if you're ignorant to what you bring to the table, the threat you bring to the agency, if you think that it's just about sitting in a seat and deciding how you're going to attack or address a certain fire, you're horribly mistaken, because you could ask the wrong question to the wrong person and now engage the entire organization into a tremendous liability or threat.
It's a process.
And if people
and I don't know if I really, maybe I just want to stay an engineer. I don't know if I want vicarious liability or to be responsible for humans. It's cool. I have kids.
Well, a lot of people's motivations to promote aren't necessarily to inherit those type of it's to avoid being underneath somebody who really shouldn't be making those decisions. Like, if you can go through the hoops.
The hoops.
You get the law.
The what?
The law. Hoopla.
Hoopla?
That's awful.
That's pretty bad. I totally not put that together.
In my mouth.
All right. Well, that's our segment for Discipline and Defense, Vicarious Liability.